Yeah.
So it abruptly closed.
Yeah, I don't quite know what that means other than they were a step ahead of the feds or something. I don't know.
They probably got in trouble with the IRS, or that they were allowing the girls to do a little bit too much touchy-feely. Maybe
or
some of that.
maybe some underage or something.
Well, hopefully you weren't there with Mr. Kraft at the time.
Oh, did he visit here? I know he did it down in Miami, but then again, maybe you were talking to Tony.
Me? I don't know Robert.
Well, that's right. You're not that. You're pretty far from Miami. Yeah.
I thought those people that flew into the towers in New York spent some time
here in Vegas. Yes.
And they went to those clubs. But I'm surprised when you said it's closed in 16.
Okay. Yeah, I was also. I had no idea when it was, but I remember a few years ago. I thought maybe it was COVID or something, but apparently it was before that.
Well,
another part of Vegas legacy's gone.
That's just too bad.
All
right. Yeah. So
nobody's going to miss it. There's plenty of other clubs in this town.
That's true.
Andy, you're going to do the bracket?
Aren't we all, or?
No, well, Jim can't because Jim is Jim. Jim boycotted the college football season.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I'm prepared. I've made my selections for the first 4 games, and then we've got the matchups coming up, and I've made a few plays.
By the way,
I have a few plays already.
I know this is NFL, brackets. But Jim, your wise guys did not do a good job last week.
No, I didn't do a good job on Sunday at all.
I said your wise guys.
My wise guys?
Yeah, Mr. A, Mr. B, and Mr. C.
I thought you were talking about the wise guys contest. No, but now I remember our Mr. Big, Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, and Mr. D or whatever, I think.
Everybody
that just shows you.
Everybody I know lost money last week.
See? It happens. Huge. Yeah. But you know what? So what you do is whenever the wise guys have an off week, and if you missed it, that's good because now you can pretty much be assured that they're probably going to come back to the mean. So they're probably going to have a good week.
It's an average, talented NFL, and you're dealing with a lot of crap.
Yeah, you're talking with some really good teams, some really bad teams, and a handful in the middle. And it's the handful in the middle that are more volatile week to week.
I mean, look at Denver, and you look at the teams that they have a 9-5 record, but look at the teams they've beaten.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only good team and marginally good team was Arizona.
Yeah, they've struggled lately.
They should not have won last week.
If you take a look at Arizona, the teams they've lost to are all teams currently in the playoffs. The teams they've beaten are all in the caliber of Carolina this week, which is interesting. I mean, they've lost to some really good teams. I think their 7 losses are all to teams, including 2 to Seattle, are all to teams currently having a playoff position. So that's a good thing as far as the Cardinals are concerned. But you take a look at a team like I forget the other one there that also has a similar problem. Oh no, the other problem, or not a problem. Look at who Tampa Bay's beaten this year now: the Chargers, the Lions, the Eagles. Don't write them off so quickly. That's
it would not be a terrible bet to take a little bit of a taste of the long shot for them to make it all the way.
Well, they're probably at very good odds because their record right now, they're a game ahead of Atlanta, and Atlanta has the tiebreaker, and probably only one team makes it out of that division, and that's the division winner. So Atlanta, they won't slip up this week against the Giants, one would think, and I forget who they.
Well, they're starting Penix. Penix is starting, right?
Yes, I do. I also know that if you're typing something like on your phone or you're texting something and you type in the word Penix, be careful they don't change the autocorrect doesn't change the last letter for you.
Oh, now Andy.
And if it does, don't hit send until you correct it.
Tampa Bay is 30-1
to win the Super Bowl.
Yep. Just like the Pittsburgh Steelers are still 30-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Which is odd. It's odd that they and Tampa Bay are at the same odds because Pittsburgh's already in the playoffs.
Well, like you said, though, Tampa Bay's had a very impressive run, and after the way Atlanta won Monday night, even though they won, I think everybody knows who's going to win that division.
Tampa Bay could easily slip up this week in Dallas. That's not going to be an easy game.
That's going to be an easy game,
especially with Dallas continuing to play well as they did in Carolina last week when the world loved the Panthers. And I understand why, because Dallas, off that bizarre loss to Cincinnati on the Monday night before, you wondered if they would show up. Well, they more than showed up. So they could give.
They won 3 of their last 4 games, and he could have easily won that game.
Yeah.
Well, that's we all
hold on just 1 minute.
Counted Dallas out, and then they beat Washington, and then after they lost to Cincinnati, started counting them out again. And they beat Carolina. So they are definitely playing hard. And you got to give Mike McCarthy credit. And that's the thing about McCarthy is that he gets a bad rap, and he really shouldn't. Look, it's not everybody is Bill Belichick. Now, not everybody is this great head coach with, an unbelievable playoff record and all this confidence that every time he's on the sidelines, you're going to win. It's just, there's just not many guys out there like that. But he's record-wise, he is just one of the best coaches that we have right now.
Well, I think
to say.
I think the criticism comes from the fact that he had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers as quarterbacks, and he didn't achieve as much as a lot of people thought he should have with those two guys.
Certainly not with Aaron Rodgers, who he got as basically into the prime of his career. Favre, I think, was a little bit towards the end.
All right. So before we get started,
by the way, I was just going to mention Tampa Bay has a real good chance of winning out because they close at home against the Panthers and the Saints.
True.
Here.
Atlanta, though, we don't know what Penix is going to bring to the table this week or how, but he can't be any worse than
exactly.
Atlanta is a little bit more difficult route, only to the extent they host the Giants and they close hosting the Panthers. But in Week 17, they are at the Commanders, Washington, probably still fighting for a wild card, especially if they lose to Philadelphia. They'll still be in good position, the Commanders will, but and I kind of think Philadelphia wins this week. But
you've seen the format, by the way. The show format, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that NFL is in about a half hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Just we could switch it.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
That's okay. We were starting a little bit talking about these teams. So,
Well, we're ripping on the air for the past 10 minutes. And before we get started, I want to show.
So let's consider this an NFL tease, what we just did.
Sure you want to save? Yes, I do. All right. What I want to do is, why didn't that thing pop up? Here it is. I want to pop this up here because I want to show I want to do a little bit of a tutorial for anybody who isn't familiar with the process of subscribing or the move from Playbook Experts over to Proline TV. So again, if you're just used to coming over here, Playbook Sports, Playbook Experts YouTube channel, as you can see down here, actually probably just pop on the videos here. See here, we went to, we were right around, it's been a while actually. Here we go. These are all the shows that were right here on the network. And then we made the switch. And so that's where we are right now. We've made the switch and we're over on Playbook. We're over on Proline TV. But the edited versions, NFL College, are still being posted here on Proline TV, on Playbook Experts, but they are not posted until a day or two after we record them. Immediately, the entire show is on Playbook. I'm getting screwed up. Proline TV. So what you do is you just head on over to Proline. Matter of fact, I even have a link. Let's just say you're checking out the last show. This is one of our last shows last week. What you got to do is come on down here, and you can hit this button here. That's the more button. And you see here to watch the full-length video, including a full slate of blah, blah, blah. And you see all this stuff here. check out our new Proline TV channel here. So you gotta do is click this, and there you go. You start watching the full-length video just like that. And you know what? You are on Proline TV. So it's as simple as that. Now you're on Proline TV. Now what you got to do is hit this button here. See, we've already subscribed. So just hit this subscribe button. Now you're subscribed. And now every time a video is posted, which will be posted on, say it's Wednesday, we post it on Wednesday. You don't have to wait till Friday for 2 edited versions. And keep in mind, there's other stuff in there that is not available. So I'd say about 75% of the content is available right now each week on Playbook Experts, but 100%, the entire show is available, Proline TV, and that's the simplest way to explain how to do it.
And they can watch live on Proline TV, correct?
Not live, no.
Oh, okay.
No,
so
because
what we're seeing looks like
we
it's
wouldn't
live.
do that. We wouldn't do that to you guys. Put it on live. That would be dangerous. So.
Oh, come on, we're pretty safe.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's a thing that you were trying to say just before we recorded. I don't know if you'd want that live, but if you say so, I'll remember that. I think we're all old enough. I know you are, Jim.
I'm barely old enough. Yes.
Yes. So, all right. That's the tutorial part of the show. Now we're going to talk about the week that was, first of all, for you gentlemen. So we'll start with you, Andy. Tell us what your best and worst of the week was.
Best play of the week was Navy in the game against Army. You know, remember, Navy had 4 weeks to prepare for this game after having played, I think, November 16th was their last game. And while it's still a huge game for Army, Army was busy preparing to play, you know, those games leading up to the American Championship over Tulane. They were, I'm sure, preparing for Navy along the way, but not 100%. Navy was always preparing just for Army. But I also like the fact that this had always been a very competitive series in most years. I think I said in 7 of the last 10 years, the game was decided by 7 points or less, and only once was it decided by exactly 7. So I thought that game went, I think it was even better than I expected it to be. I expected it to be a tight game, but Navy pretty much in control.
Well, why do you think, though, that why do you think it happened like that? Because we said that last week, if something strange happens in this game, it's only 1 year, but we're going to have to refer back to the fact that Army played a championship game the week before. That was never an issue before. Now, look, they have to get to a championship game again next year, and that just not going to happen for Army every year, or even Navy. But nobody's going to convince me that, and I'm not saying, of course, you put that into your equation, which is what a good handicapper does. But nobody's going to convince me that if Army did not have the game, that the championship game, that's the same result. It's nowhere near the same result.
It's hard to say because, again, this is such a huge competitive rivalry, and Navy had that.
Yeah, but they were never blowouts. Never blowouts.
There was a 15-0 game a couple of years ago, and there were some other games when one of the teams
that was
really
a complete
bad.
Whitewater. But they were really good football teams this year.
In any sense, I would not expect it to be a blowout like this next year rather. But keep in mind, Navy was also playing with double revenge from losing to Army the last 2 years. So that, I think, had something to do with it as well. But I think the less preparation time, and again, it's typically a close game. Yes, I would not expect it to be a blowout next year, unless one of these teams is 1-10 and the other team is 9-2 or whatever it is. And, there's just a huge talent difference. But usually, because they both have pretty much the same recruiting standards to get into the academies, not just for football, that the talent is going to be pretty much even. And occasionally some of the athletes may develop a lot more than was expected of them coming in. We've seen a number of cases of athletes at many schools who blossom into much better than they were projected as. A 3-star recruit all of a sudden, in his junior year says, hey, he's playing like he was a 5-star recruit, etc. So I think that sort of levels the playing field as far as Army and Navy go. So yeah, I would not expect that to occur next year, but that's why they play the games. And
what was your worst of the week?
Well, I was just going to get to that. Also, the other thing was Horvath looked fully healthy because he had the month to repair. The worst game was a similar blowout. What Tampa Bay did to the Chargers on Sunday. That was unexpected. I mentioned that Tampa Bay had already showed its ability early in the year. At the time, it was Detroit's only loss in week 2, even though Detroit totally dominated the stats. They lost that game to Tampa. And the fact that Tampa also beat Philadelphia, for one of their 2 losses.
Why do you think that was, why was that your worst? Because I would have thought that would have been, hey, you know what? I think nobody expected that.
No, but that's what turned it into the worst play of the week for me.
Well, okay.
Unless you're
from that angle, okay.
Yeah. No. What were you looking for as far as
any angle you want?
Oh, okay, yeah.
You could take it from that angle. That's fine. I mean, you can also take it as what was were you completely wrong on? That was it. A bad play.
It. Yeah.
No, that was a bad play. That wasn't a bad play. Nobody expected that.
No, well, it turned out to be though.
It wasn't. Nobody expected Tampa Bay to blow out the Chargers.
That's why it was a bad play, which equals the worst.
It wasn't a bad play. How can it be a bad play?
It's a bad play based on the results.
I know that
every play I make is considered not a bad play before the game. Otherwise, I wouldn't have played it. And I think that most people would agree with that. Okay. I use words as saying, I had no way of expecting it, but obviously I wish I hadn't played it.
A married couple having a fight.
That was last week.
I'll give a point to Andy on that. I see what his point is on that.
So what was did you have
when you give out the Panthers -3 and they get blown out by 100, that's a bad play.
Yeah,
first
same thing.
A bad pick, a bad play, a bad result. It was bad everything. Yeah. That's it. All comes down to how it comes out.
Yeah.
It's.
So give us your best and worst of the week, Jim.
Well, I had a winning Thursday, winning Friday, winning Saturday, winning Monday, winning Tuesday, but Sunday was a disaster. I had Seattle, I had the Panthers, I had the Steelers.
What was your worst, Jim?
I won
your worst. Give me one.
One. What?
One. Worst of the week. Come on, just give me a worst of the week. What stuck out the worst?
Well, the Panthers would have to be. You got a small favorite that got absolutely cooked. Yeah, but the only thing that saved me was my totals. That was the only thing.
Well, what did you? Remember that was the one thing that we talked about too. That is, and it happened again. Is the team that is not used to being the favorite.
Yeah, you did say that. You were right.
But that is something. I don't know if. Remember, you said it had been what?
I don't know what the hell it is.
You said it had been what, a couple of years since the Panthers were a favorite, something like that?
I think it was like 30-some games. They were an underdog, and all of a sudden they were a favorite, and they just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, it's just so strange, too.
Maybe it's an expectation. When you're an underdog, there's no expectation. When you're a favorite, there's something, you're expected to do something. I don't know, but but you're right, and it does work a lot like that. But I ignored it because whatever, it was a bad decision.
And did you have a specific game that you liked the most? What did you like the most about last week?
I did have the Buccaneers. And
yes, you did.
Basically because, well, first of all, I like the way they're playing. I've talked about Baker Mayfield playing great all year. They seem to have it together. But the other thing was, the injury issues with the Chargers bothered me, and it bothers me this week too. Although they're not playing a team like the Buccaneers. They're playing basically a kind of a fraudulent team in Denver. They haven't beaten anybody all year, but the problem with the swollen knee that Herbert has and the hurt ankle. And he's not getting the protection because they have line injuries as well. That's a very tough situation there. And then you got Knicks through three interceptions last week. The Colts should have beaten them, and if it wasn't for that dumb play of dropping the ball on the 1-inch line by Indianapolis, they would have never won that game.
Yeah, that just shows you some. You would have thought that would have been a Richardson play, but a veteran like Taylor to make a move like that, that's for the next guy to do it, that's even worse. Because after what just happened to Taylor,
the only decent team that Denver beat this year was their first win of the season, ironically enough, at Tampa Bay. and it was a convincing win. But you're right. Other than that, they really haven't. I don't think they've beaten any other team with a winning record.
Tony, best and worst of the week?
The worst, I'll start with the worst because I'll give you what you want. But I thought, like you were just saying, what's the worst thing you saw this weekend? Which is Detroit losing more players. That was pretty awful. I mean, now they're down their goal line back the rest of the way. Now you're down another defensive lineman. So
I think they're done. I don't know about you, but I think they're done.
I mean, again, like how can you replace these guys? I mean,
you can't.
Quality guys.
They also lost their running back.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
horrible.
The advantage that was they have two really good running backs, so they've each played about half of what a normal running back would have been played at this time. But it does reduce their effectiveness. A, now having only one real running option, and B, he's going to gain a lot more. He's going to see a lot more action over the rest.
Well,
of
you
the
can
week,
lose Montgomery and win a championship. You can't lose Montgomery, McNeil, Hutchinson. I mean, that just gets ridiculous.
What was it? Sonic and I forget what the other. I have a girl who loves Sonic too, but I can't forget. Can't remember what the other
movie
Montgomery has. Huh?
The movie.
Right. So, their nicknames, Gibbs and Montgomery, is Sonic and the other guy.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah, I mean, Montgomery's the goal line back. I mean, you hand him the ball, he gets it in. So, and so my worst, I think, would be here. Let me go back, and I did really well on NFL, but it was very small. I only handed it to a couple of people that reached out on Twitter. I like the Cardinals and I like the Bengals Titans over. Both were pretty easy wire to wire winners. I did like where was it? So I guess this would be my worst of the weekend. I like the Commanders a lot. I don't see how the Saints keep hanging around in games, and they did. And that touchdown pass that Daniels threw was amazing. It was fluky just to get the win and avoid the upset loss. So
how hard? But I mean, you had it like really there when he completely overthrew
that's
McLaurin.
Not a terrible play. I mean, you had they should have won that game. That wasn't a terrible play.
Which play?
A tough loss.
Which play?
But it wasn't a terrible play.
Yeah, I mean they were up the whole way. So yeah, it was like 14-0 at the break, and you feel good about that. So that's the worst thing that happened to me. I am. Here we go. 3-0. Can we see this? Yeah, you can see it. I'm 3-0 on my bowl picks so far, and in this contest, John Murray and Kelly in Vegas do on the site that they run, or it's like a pick.
You think we didn't believe you, Tony?
Well, I'm just showing it for the audience. Obviously, you guys believe me. Jackson State was part of this, so it hit them. South Alabama over Western Michigan and Memphis over West Virginia. So we will see. Can't do better than 3 for 3 to start with, but obviously long road ahead. And
where'd you get the Memphis line at?
What was it on this 3.5?
Wow, really?
Yeah, it moved around a lot. There were some people that got 5.5 too, but the other side.
Same thing with South Alabama, Western Michigan game. That line bounced around.
But as far as handing out client plays and whatnot, this is, I mean, you're hearing last minute. All right, this guy's entering the transfer portal. The kid from Western Kentucky, but he's going to play. But Mendoza from Cal is entering the transfer portal, isn't going to play. So I mean, you really have to know that going in and who's invested.
I agree with what Mark said. They have to not do this. They just can't do this. Have these transfers right in the middle of these games or right before it's crazy. Somebody's got to have some rules.
And it's a simple solution. No transfer portal until the day after the championship game is played. End of story. That's it. Simple.
Everybody's I agree. I just think it's going to be there's going to be a commissioner of college football. It's been talked about for years. Somebody whose word ends up being gospel and isn't tied to any conference or affiliation like that. And we'll just have to take. Hopefully, I mean, I would have thought Bill Belichick would have been a good one. Now he's coaching.
I was going to say it's also a distraction to the players, coaches who remain and playing, and they're thinking more about who they're missing. The coaches are planning for whom they're missing, and that ultimately results into generally not as well played a game as it should be, as if there were no distractions at all or limited distractions. Let's say.
And we'll touch on this probably in this next segment, but like directly affects the Penn State situation where you get Pavula transferring out, and he's got to transfer out
because the better in my mind.
Huh?
For the better in my mind. I hate it when you bring that kid in. It just takes away from the offense, to tell you the truth. That's like a wildcat guy. I hate that wildcat gimmick, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, it could be an issue at the goal line.
Yeah,
they do have problems sometimes at the goal line, which is
now
amazing.
Franklin, you're basically saying I can't risk Aller on a couple QB sneaks, because if he breaks his hand, I'm done.
I mean, it is stupid. It is. But what does that tell you too? I think if about the player itself, if you're another team that wants one of these players that does this, that's got to tell you something.
I disagree with, because I'll say this. First of all, a lot of these guys aren't going to be pros, and so NIL is going to be the most money that they're going to make.
But there's no deadline.
No. And he could have stayed.
Yeah,
but now the bottom line is, I mean, UCF is one of the schools that he's looking at. He's looking at a couple Power Fours to go in and potentially start. You know how you get ahead, you start immediately. So once all these coaches are named and you announce in the transfer portal, there's competition for who's going where. And then the thing that I think clinched it was Aller says, I'm coming back. Well, if you're coming back, I'm still going to be your backup. I've got to look out for number one. So, you know, I see it from that standpoint. If he had
wonder if we could see that at Texas with Ewers and Manning.
You could see that, except I think that they know Ewers is leaving and Manning will be
he's got to go. Especially if who knows what's wrong with him. And we're going to get into this in a little bit, because injury-wise at quarterback for a couple of teams is going to be big. And want to remind everybody who is tuning in here, let's just say you're tuning in just for the college football segment. You are able to watch the entire full-length video here, a Playbook ADS podcast, right here on Proline TV. So don't forget to check it out, Proline TV. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss any full-length videos here on this network. Okay, let's get into it. So we're going to go over a whole bunch of stuff here in college football. We didn't get a chance to do it last week, but now we've got Tony. By the way, Mark was going to try to make it, but once again, just too much going on between the bold newsletter, the regular newsletter. So he wasn't able to make it this week. So that's why you don't see Tony. And Victor, I forget, Victor had another engagement as well. So he's out. So, but luckily Tony's on board. So we've got a fourth person and a third person to really go in depth on college football, because the three of us will give our bracket predictions every step of the way. And
we're not trying to set a record again this week. I mean,
no, we're not going to do that. No.
I mean, what was it? 2.5 hours?
2 hours and 15 minutes. No record.
You guys were on for 2:15 last year?
Yes, we did. Yeah, and Andy was concerned. Andy was concerned we weren't going to have enough time to talk before the show started. So, I mean, we were going to be able to have a long show. So, you missed that, Mark Andy, by about an hour and a half.
See, what we're going for, Tony, is we're going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner all within the show.
Nice.
That's the goal.
All right. So,
no.
It happened.
First thing I want to bring up are all the college football changes, and I think most of them are positive. I love the fact that we're getting Rich Rod back to West Virginia, Scott Frost back to Central Florida, Dan Mullins back. He's going to UNLV. And, of course, Bill Belichick in North Carolina. That could be nothing but good. Also, I like the fact that if you look at a lot of these coaches that are being hired, you know, from like programs like Butler and Davidson and East Tennessee State, all these really successful FCS type of programs, we've seen it succeed before. And so now you've got a bunch of schools. I also like the fact that, I mean, Sam Houston's a successful head coach is going to Temple. I mean, they've just had dreadful losing. I mean, Matt Rule was the only one to actually get, do something there for a couple of years. I mean, Fresno State.
Does he have ties to the area? Because that seems like a very odd move. I wouldn't even call it a lateral move, going to a place.
Yeah, it is.
Unless the offer monetarily was huge, because Sam Houston's got a nice little program, a lot of potential there, and I would think that with the success he's had, he probably could have gotten a job in, at the very least, one of the Power 4 conferences.
It had to be, because Conference USA is so bad, and the Americans at least to step up.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and then Fresno State, by the way, is getting the successful North Dakota State coach, who was the defensive coach at USC for a year. Now he's going to be the head coach at Fresno. So, and by the way, that kind of move, I think, could be something to keep an eye on. It might be a wild card, but regarding Ryan Day, now look, I think with Jim Harbaugh being a head coach and doing success so far in the NFL, that's going to probably be too much of an ego for Ryan Day to say, okay, if I'm going to go to the NFL as head coach or forget it. But I would not be shocked at all if he decided, if there was a job opportunity somewhere, maybe he had ties somewhere, that if someone said, hey, come over here, be my assistant coach for a year or two, and then you can relax, get the stress out of the, Ohio State deal, just relax for a couple of years and then find a nice spot in the NFL as a head coach. I would not be surprised if that was the way it went for Ryan Day. But anyway, Ryan Day is somebody that is still going to get you would expect some head coaching opportunities, all depending on the situation. That's why I thought that was interesting, because I think it's a smart way to do it.
They have Chip Kelly if he wanted to take over to replace him. So it's not like they would have to go outside the program or get an inexperienced head coach at that level if they chose.
That would be interesting to see if they went that route. How would they feel about Chip Kelly? Sure.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
And Dave Clawson resigned, and I don't know if he's going to retire, but how do you not like what Dave Clawson did at Wake Forest? That was a really great job. Nobody won at Wake Forest that I could recall until Dave Clawson came around.
Yeah, so, he took an advisor role, so it was probably just like, hey, if you're spent, you've done enough, we'll just get you an advisor. And I like they got the guy from Washington State, Dickman, is it?
Yes, that's right, Dickert. Yep,
Dickert.
That was a nice move as well. That was smart. And FIU got their coach. I guess what they got a coach who was with Florida A&M, and then he was in the running for the job before.
Yeah, he's got South Florida ties.
Yeah, so that's a smart move. You like, and the Ohio coach, I know he's getting up there in age, but talk about an underrated coach. So this is a great hire for Charlotte. To get this guy.
Oh, he had tremendous success the last 3 years. I think they won something like 30 games. I think they were 30-8 or something in his last 3 years. He took over a bad program at the beginning, but his second, third, and fourth years have been tremendous.
Out of those top four, Rich Rod, Scott Frost, Dan Mullen, Bill Belichick, who's going to have the most success?
Belichick, to me. I think that they're going to spend money. He is going to run that like a professional program. Rich Rod, that's tough for him to come back to West Virginia and excel running his offense, because his offense is so gimmicky. But it is the Big 12 that he's stepping into. Scott Frost at UCF. That's again. People were asking me, obviously, do you like Scott Frost? I had no problems with Scott Frost leaving for Nebraska, because he's going back to Nebraska. How can you? And UCF fan base. I think we're a little soft as a fan base, to be honest with you. The things that they say on Twitter, they call themselves the UCF Twitter mafia. Hopefully, not a lot of people see this, but I really think it's tacky. We're the youngest FBS program that's risen from an independent to a Power 4. And people have these ridiculous expectations. They went 0-12 with George O'Leary before Scott Frost took over, for Christ's sakes. So, I thought that Malzahn did get a bad rap, but at the same time, he couldn't rescue what the season became.
Expectations.
Run the offense at FSU. That's fine.
I was going to mention O'Leary, and ever since that winless season, it seems that whatever coaches come in there, they've maintained a certain level of proficiency. I don't know if they've had many losing seasons since
we've been in
season, and that's
been
several
coaches. Year.
Yeah,
and all good hires. Frost.
I think Frost will do well.
Josh Heupel and Malzahn. Heupel went to Tennessee, took the AD with him, that was a package deal, and then Malzahn, when he was hired, still Gus Malzahn. So if he's enthused like he says he is, I technically wanted Barry Odom. But that's fine. We'll just see what happens from here. But
okay. So Bill Belichick.
To answer your question, it's got to be Belichick, because I just don't see that. If kids are tough enough mentally to say, "Hey, I want to go play for that guy," That's half the battle.
That's the question. And I think Odom will have a much more difficult time at Purdue than he would have had at UCF.
Oh yeah, no question. Purdue's a basketball school at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say the same thing about Indiana, but I mean, what Signetti's done might be a one-off. Huh?
When was Purdue good? Who was their coach?
When Joe Tiller was there.
Yeah, way back when.
Basketball on grass, like early 2000s.
Yeah.
All right. So next up is here's another question before we get into the playoffs. Which bowl game are you most looking forward to and why?
I'll tell you right now. Alabama, Michigan. Two of the teams that made it to the Final Four last year are facing each other in, the ReliaQuest Bowl. I think it's December 31st, New Year's Eve. That'll just be interesting, especially with the new coaches at both schools.
Okay. Tony?
I'll say Tennessee, Ohio State.
No playoffs.
Oh, no, the non-playoff. Okay, well, then I'll just say my best bet because it's my
yeah.
Wise
You could
guys
do that.
Pick. It's my Wise Guys pick, and I'm gung ho about it. And even
it's this week.
Even though Tim Albin is gone, it's Ohio University against Jacksonville State. I just think that's a lock, and it's hard to say that bowl games are a lock, but I just don't see Ohio losing that game.
They're both without their head coaches, I guess.
Right.
Huh? That's funny. All right, so that's your best college football bowl game to watch.
By the way, I was just going to point out. Laura said the Alabama Michigan game, but as far as the Ohio U Jacksonville State game, Ohio U won their first conference title since like 1968. Normally, you would think that would lead to a letdown in their next game, but not when the next game is like 3 weeks away. The jubilation will have had a chance to wear off, and the kids are able to now focus on the game coming up. So keep in mind that a lot of in fact, it used to be, I think back not that long ago, where you would have a team that would be playing, like Ohio State might be playing in the Rose Bowl. They would have like 5 weeks off between their last regular season game or their conference championship game and their bowl game. You don't see that quite as much now because a lot of these games now start 2 to 3 weeks. 2 weeks after the end of the regular season in many cases. And in fact, I think one of the first bowl games, that South Alabama game, was about 10 days after the conference championship games.
Yep.
My favorite bowl game was going to be the Independence Bowl, and then Marshall opted out. So that just shows you how awful this whole system is, by the way. Good luck. Good for Louisiana Tech. They weren't going anywhere. So I guess they get an opportunity to play for a bowl now, or they're in a bowl. I think the BYU Colorado game.
By the way, that's basically a home game for Louisiana Tech.
No, Louisiana Tech. Yeah.
17 points.
BYU Colorado. I think that's going to be a good game to watch.
Is Shador playing?
Yeah, from what I haven't heard anybody say that none of these guys are out yet. But it's still a week away, 10 days away.
You have to. You can't bet on that game until a day or two before when they're saying I'm in.
Yeah. So, but we haven't heard anything yet.
And that's got to be an extremely rare situation of two conference teams facing each other in a bowl game. Unless it's like in a playoff game or something and both teams advance or something.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that. That's true.
When I first saw that, I was like, well, at least they didn't play each other. Maybe that has something to do with it. That they
were both in contention.
So.
They were both in contention to play in the Big 12 title game until the final week of the season.
Also, I guess another game that I'm looking forward to watching would be the Baylor LSU game. I think that's probably one of the better ones. And congratulations finally to the committee or whoever put these bowls together, because I've been asking for that for so long. It's nice that the MAC champion is playing the Conference USA champion in a bowl game. I mean, that's what you want to see in these bowl matchups, is at least in these smaller bowls, give me something like that. Give me the champion against the champion, so it gives you something in the game. Now, fortunately, both coaches are gone, but it's still the two top teams of those conferences, and I think that's kind of fun. So, all right. Next. Andy, did you have like a best bet at all that you wanted to share regarding the bowl season, or is it still too early and you really don't like anything in the next several days?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned the game I'm most interested in is the Alabama-Michigan game.
I mean, like a bet.
Yeah. I haven't. Well, the one that I'm looking at right now is Navy taking the points against Oklahoma.
I like
about
that.
7 right now.
That's not bad.
How
about the money line in that game? Would you do that?
Yeah, I might. I've not been impressed with the job Venables has done at Oklahoma. He's lost a lot of talent, but that's part of the recruiting and all that. And Oklahoma didn't have a great debut season in the SEC, but they still have now that SEC or certainly the old Big 12 pedigree. So they're still going to be a formidable team. But I have to think Navy will be a lot more interested in this game, especially after winning the Commanders-in-Chief trophy. And again, it'll be 2 weeks later, two and a half weeks later that they play.
Jim, have you heard anything regarding your own wise guys on any of these bowl games that you care to share? Not just one.
I did send you some today that they gave.
Just give me one that you think might be the most interesting.
Michigan.
Some
of the people I talked to like Michigan.
All right. Interesting. Just the spread, not to win outright.
Like I said to you, and you didn't agree with this one guy put a whole bunch of money on. I mean, these are guys I talked to. They win money doing this. So Sam Houston.
Yeah, that one is strange that was the case. What do you guys think? Because when he said the Sam Houston to me, I was wait a second.
I don't have any reasons. They just give me who they're
I'm just telling you that I agree. I mean, it's like, well, they lost their head coach. There's even some players that aren't there. Georgia Southern hasn't lost anything. Everybody's playing, as far as I know, anybody important. They're in the Sun Belt. Sam Houston's in the Conference USA. So that's why I was like, does he know something I don't know? But what do you guys think?
I played Sam Houston plus I think 6.5 a little earlier, and I just think they're the better overall program. They have a nice little pedigree. Georgia Southern, for many years before they joined FBS, they were a dominant power in the FCS level for a number of years, and they successfully moved up. But I like what I've seen out of this Sam Houston team the last couple of years. And I just think that the talent level is fairly even, and I'm getting points from a team that should be interested. They've lost their coach, but that happened, I think, even before that may have happened before the conference championship weekend.
So you don't think Georgia Southern, the interested party is more likely Sam Houston?
Not necessarily. I just think the talent level is about the same. And if I'm getting nearly a full touchdown, I'll take a chance. You never know what the motivation is, especially for these games that are being played.
No, you don't.
Right before Christmas time, and their thoughts are, gee, what are my teammates getting me for Christmas gifts?
I have Sam plus 4.5 in this contest, and I don't know what Clay Helton is bringing back quarterback wise. Who's in the portal? So I'll double check and change it if I can. That's a good thing about this stuff is I can always alter it until like a few minutes before.
Why did your quarterback not playing?
We'll have to see. Georgia Southern, as Andy mentioned, they went from being an FCS power running the triple option to Helton got there, and now they run basically an air raid. So,
well, I mean, this year's team, though, I mean, I seen him play a few times, and I thought they played well. I mean, the quarterback was French, not
that kid from Canada. Yeah.
But yeah, they had and they gave Boise all they could handle early on in the season. Matter of fact, if Marshall did not come back and win that last game, Georgia Southern would have been in the championship game of the Sun Belt, which is a pretty decent conference in the group of 5. Sam Houston it's interesting because look, we know Sam Houston's got a really good defense, but they can't score for crap. I mean, if they win the game, it's probably going to be 9-6. So which could happen. Yeah. I mean, that's how they win games.
What you're saying is a good underbet.
I was just
I would say so. No. Yeah, probably. All right, let's get to the bracket picks. And just before I do this, Andy, I don't know if you've done this yet, guys, but have you guys? Because I have 6 teams that I believe can win the championship. 6 I believe cannot. Do you? Can you give me a number of teams that you believe can win the championship?
I haven't looked at it that way because I thought you were. I thought the
no,
question
just bringing this up. It's a new
question.
Oh,
okay, yeah, because I know that you said we have bets on as far as winning the championship. Realistically, well, it's hard to say. Everybody thinks they have a chance, and you still got to play some of these games.
Well, I'll ask you: do you think Notre Dame has a chance?
Yes, absolutely. I think Oregon. Notre Dame, Oregon, absolutely. I think
Ohio State,
possibly.
Penn,
they would not
Penn
be amongst
State.
my top. Penn State, possibly.
Texas.
Yes.
Georgia.
Yes, but it's a little bit shaky. This is not the same team we've seen the last 2 years. I think they're playing well enough and played in a major conference and performed exceptionally well all year. Yes, I think they do.
Boise.
Probably not.
Clemson.
Probably not.
Indiana.
Probably not.
SMU.
Probably not.
Tennessee.
Possibly.
Tony, do you agree with what do you agree, disagree with any of that?
I'll just go with 10 of 12, make it simple.
10 of 12. Wow.
12,
okay. I love it.
That can't make it. That can't make it.
Look, 10 of 12 that can win.
That can win, he's saying.
Oh,
yes.
10
he's all in, baby.
Really?
The reason why I'll say this is because 4 are already 2 wins away.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So who can't make it?
I will say that the 2 long shots for me are Clemson and SMU.
Wow.
I think SMU's program depth isn't quite there yet. And I think Penn State wins that game at home. And Clemson, I mean, they're working with Maffa at 70% as a running back against a team that's going to stop the run. So you're one-dimensional in front of 100,000 people. So
okay. Bracket time. Let's go ahead. And again, all we're going to do is basically we're going to go through the brackets and you guys give your thoughts and I'll write them down. I'll hold everybody accountable here. So let's start first of all with the first game, Notre Dame, Indiana. This is the game that's going to start it all on Friday night. And it's in South Bend. So you love the fact that you got this little in-state mini rivalry going on here. But that's awesome. These are the games you want to see in the playoffs. Notre Dame is what? I think they're still about 7.5 as far as the line is concerned.
7.5.
Yeah. 7.5. So that's the line is money line's a little over 2. Okay. Andy, who do you like to win the game?
I like Notre Dame. I'd like to make a case for Indiana. They haven't played a very tough schedule. When they stepped up in that one game against Ohio State, while they were competitive for a while, they ended up being outmatched. Notre Dame, of course, played a very varied schedule, not being a member of a conference. They had that one slip up in week 2, that 16-14 loss to Northern Illinois, and then they just continued to just play and win by huge margins the rest of the way. Now, I will say that both teams played Purdue, the third part of that Indiana FBS trio, and they actually both have very similar statistics. I think Notre Dame won 66-0, and I think Indiana won 66-7. I think the total yards allowed to Purdue or against Purdue, the total yards gained were very similar. I don't think there was a big difference in the total yards allowed, etc. So statistically, in that one game against arguably, a big rival for both because they're within the state, showed these teams to be even. I just think that right now Notre Dame's roster is a bit deeper, a bit more experienced. I've liked the job that Marcus Freeman has done. Don't know how the effect of a contract extension will do. That's not always necessarily a good thing, except for him, as far as the team's focus. But this is a team that's been very focused much of the year, and I like them to advance, and I actually like them in this game to cover the 7.5.
All right. Yep. Notre Dame has covered 8 straight games, so keep that in mind. Meanwhile, Indiana, you mentioned that Ohio State game. The 2 toughest opponents they played this season, basically, they dropped both spreads 0-2.
Yep. And
that was actually the 2 worst games Rourke played this year. Rourke did not play well against both teams, and now he's got to step it up at Notre Dame. Notre Dame only has the number 2 pass defense in the country. Actually, Ohio State was number 2, Notre Dame number 3. All right, Tony, who do you like?
I like the first half under, and I like the full game under, and that is going to be my big bet. Well, sidewise, I think Indiana can play with them, so I would take the points. But I'm not as gung-ho on that as I am the low side. It's going to be the feel-like weather, 13, 15 degrees.
Yeah,
some
it's awesome.
wind,
Little snow.
Wind, little snow flurries, 2 Indiana schools. Notre Dame is not going to dominate you offensively unless you can't handle them up front. I mean, that's really long runs and stuff. I mean, obviously Riley Leonard can beat you with his legs. I trust his legs more than his arm. It's going to be cold weather. So I mean, this game does favor Notre Dame, but I like Rourke too. Liked his brother when he was in school, and now I think he's hanging around that CFL, NFL third string type area, and I have been a big believer in Indiana despite their lack of strength of schedule. And I liked them against Ohio State to cover, and they were in that game until the two special teams blunders at the end of that first half, where it was a muff punt, basically set them up, and then some other nonsense. You can't do that against teams that are better than you. So if they play a clean game, I think that they'll hang around. But I just think this is going to be a cold weather game where it's the first of the 12-team field CFP format. I expect it to be scoreless in the first quarter, halfway through. And then you've got a first half under of, I believe, 24.5 to 26, depending. I saw that the final number right now is hovering around 51. I think we get a 17, 13, 20, 13, max 24-17 game. So I love the under. Out of all these four games, it's the one that I will touch more significantly than the others.
All right, so under first half and total.
And full game.
And who's your bracket pick?
We'll say Notre Dame survives at home. Okay. But I would take the points with IU.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take Notre Dame for both. I also think what's important is, just from what I've seen this year, and that is the fact that, remember, all of these top players from Indiana, a lot of the top ones came from Group of Five. Rourke, Mack, James Madison. Matter of fact, a lot of these James Madison players were FC recruits. So they have done really well for Indiana. But I think that's where, and when you match them up against the better teams and you see them just getting overmatched, that's what worries me about this. You would think that they've been down that road, so it should be better, more experienced the third time around. But I just think they're going to be in the cathedral.
They are. I will say this. What's Notre Dame's loss?
What's that?
What was Notre Dame's loss?
Oh, yeah, well,
Northern Illinois.
They that's like a game
very similar teams.
Yeah, that's just.
It was after they won. It was a week after they won
game.
It was also the week after they had that big win at Texas A&M that everyone was shouting as a game that could decide.
And look, I have a very difficult time backing, which I'm doing, Notre Dame and Penn State this playoff season, because they are just not good in big games. They are not good, and haven't been in a long time. So if they both lose to this weekend, I'm going to feel like an idiot, and I'm going to be like, well, I deserve it, backing these two teams, but it's just the way I'm going to go. And I do think Notre Dame is capable of doing even more damage after this, but we'll get to that later.
If Cignetti stays at Indiana and gets to recruit a couple of more years, this will be an even contest in 2 years.
Well, the interesting thing is going to be now Cignetti can't steal all those players again like he did, because he's at Indiana. So what's his next trick? What does he have?
I'll tell you what, with what he did this year, he'll get a lot more five-star recruits consider Indiana.
Well, that will be important if he is. Well, he just needs the fours and the good threes, really. Yeah.
But he'll be able to convince some fives to consider now too.
Too bad he's old.
Never being thought. Yeah.
That's too bad. I didn't realize how old he was until I checked. I was like, geez, it was like in his 40s. He'd be like an NFL prospect. But he's near the end of his road already. All right. And then we've got the first game on Saturday, Penn State and SMU. Andy?
I like Penn State. I like them to cover in this game as well. I know it's big game James, or not so big game James, as the case may be with Franklin. But this is a quasi big game, because the big games come up as you advance further into the tournament. And thus, I don't know that this is the one where he gets eliminated. It might come a little bit further down the road. I think I said before that I didn't like their chances to win the whole thing. They didn't play a tremendous schedule. Their two losses were to the two best teams that they played, albeit a 1-point loss to Oregon, and then that 7-point loss to Ohio State. So they've been competitive. I just think SMU is stepping up in class. I think they showed some of their vulnerabilities, and to their credit, their resiliency in falling behind. They were 17 down in the championship game against Clemson, and then rallied to arguably send the game into overtime, but for the kick return that set up the winning field goal at the final moments in the ACC title game. But that resiliency, I think, was also what enabled the committee to take SMU over perhaps in Alabama or South Carolina, whoever you want to say was next. They say it was SMU and Alabama. But I think it's a step up in class. And as much as I'm not the big fan of Franklin in important games, not necessarily big games, but sometimes they're one and the same, I just think they have the talent. Playing at home, I'm guessing it'll be a whiteout crowd. Well, maybe not that early in the day, but unless it's overcast. But nonetheless, I just think it's too much for SMU. I think if there's a team that's going to make a mistake, it's more likely SMU. I think Penn State's defense will be able to control that the offensive attack of the Mustangs.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on the weather situation there as well. Because remember, SMU is coming from Texas, and it's usually a lot warmer than colder. So the conditions definitely can come into play to favor Penn State in that one. Tony, by the way, do you have a pick on the game, Andy, at all in any way?
Yeah, you said Penn State. Penn State to win and cover.
No.
I'm sorry. I had the mute down the first second.
Okay. And what is that?
Yeah,
what are they?
8.5? 8.5 right now, I think is what I'm saying largely. Yeah.
Tony?
I'm with Penn State on this one too. Just a tough environment to trust SMU in. I'm looking, their toughest road game was Louisville. I mean, they won at Duke, they won at Nevada, and that Nevada game, they were down within inside the final 8 minutes or so. They stole that game. And
the Duke game, they had 6 turnovers.
Correct. And so, I mean, the Clemson comeback was impressive, and I was certainly rooting for them at the end, just because to keep Alabama out. But the fact is they got down to a team that really lost its best running back in game, and we'll talk about Clemson next. But basically had a one-dimensional offense against them that were just trying to kill the clock, and then Jennings played really well to knock that up, and Clemson went into Clemsoning mode. I think the whiteout isn't in full effect this weekend, even though it's a day game. And it's just going to be a tough environment. So long as Aller stays healthy, I just think there's too many weapons on both sides of the ball. I have no problem saying that Penn State should win by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, unfortunately, the whiteout isn't going to be as effective, but it is, I guess, what is that? It gets the camaraderie, and the fans are all going to be in unison, and it could be also intimidating, especially if you've never been there before. So,
right. Yeah. You're saying
what's it going to be? 100,000?
No, it's at 12.
No, that's what I'm saying, but that's why the whiteout
because it's
effective.
Yeah. I mean, visually on TV, though, we've seen. I mean, you look at the Ohio State-Michigan game, and everybody's in scarlet, whatever it is. It's like, it's not a big deal.
That's
at least in my mind.
Greg, that's 100,000 seats, right?
Yeah. Okay. Next up, Clemson and Texas. And this seems to be the dog that is getting the most play, and as well they should. I mean, Clemson has got a history, even though it hasn't been recently. But as Mark pointed out in the newsletter, a couple of really big trends that work for Dabo when he goes up in big game situations as the dog. So that's another reason why you want to click on that link if you haven't already purchased the newsletter and find out more about this matchup and all the other matchups. So yeah, Texas is they 11.5, I believe. Is that what the spread is? The most recent one, 12.
I thought
11.5.
It opened 13.5. So yeah. I mean, money significantly came in on Clemson.
And you're getting a nice money line play of about 350, which is really nice. Look, I think we saw some issues in for Texas in the SEC championship game. What's going to be important? I don't know if you guys have heard yet whether Banks is going to play. We don't know yet. Okay. So that is huge because their offensive line was toast. Georgia manhandled and Clemson. That's a big strength for them. TJ Parker has been awesome down the stretch as an edge rusher. So keep an eye on Banks. Look, he won the Lombardi Awards. He's the best tackle in college football, says college football. So if he doesn't play, that is a huge loss for Texas. Keep in mind, too, Texas was 80th in the country in penalties, and they had 11 in the SEC title game. Clemson, had none in the ACC title game. Clemson's also 5th in the country in turnover margin. That's important because that's how you got to win if you're Clemson right now. And that's how, that's the type of team they are. They're more of a defensive team. They've got young receivers. But as you said, Tony, and I'm going to start with you on this side of the bracket, the condition of the running game for Clemson is basically going to be non-existent outside of the quarterback. And is that going to be enough? And I think if they lose the turnover battle or don't win it, I think they have no chance. If they win the turnover battle, they'll be there till the end, but they can't do it without turnovers.
Right. I mean, you basically have to play from ahead to survive this game. And so I would not mind maybe a first half over because I think Klubnik's got to throw from the jump. I think you go in saying we're not even going to pretend. If you watch the second half of the SMU game, you see our running back is 70% at best, and he's shying away from contact.
If that, yeah.
And he's a good running back when healthy. And so they lose this kid Jay Haynes, who's really speedy freshman. So he's out. So you're down to one. I mean, they didn't get another guy ready to take some carries, but for the most part,
it's going to be young. Yeah, probably a redshirt freshman. Yeah.
If you want to be competitive in this game, you've got to score early. This Texas defense, I mean, they've been great most of the season. They've had some hiccups here and there, but I mean, they've been more consistent in the offense, which says a lot, given that Sarkisian's their coach. So I think Clemson, you have to pull off something surprising early if you want to stay in this game. If it keeps coming down, if it comes down to 10, I would take Texas. Otherwise, I'm going to stay away from it. And I think I do like the over. I think that this Clemson defense is a little overrated. I think certainly they've lost so much talent to the NFL over the last few years. And this team has looked so vulnerable against, really mediocre teams most of the season. So, lost to Louisville, didn't see that coming. So I see Texas winning. So they'll be my play. If it comes down, I'll lay the points. And again, I think it ends up being a 38-24 game.
Okay. Andy? Mute button. You got
there we go.
There you go.
Yeah,
okay.
I was looking for some notes and couldn't find them. No, I like Texas in this game. They both Clemson and Texas played Georgia. Clemson played them the first game of the year, 34-3, when Georgia's defense was as healthy as it was likely to be all season. And as we found out later in the season, yeah, they're a good defense, but nothing near the level of the last 2 years. And Clemson could do absolutely nothing on offense against that Georgia defense. I think this Texas defense this year is better than that Clemson defense. And Texas managed much better against that Georgia defense. In the first game that they lost, 30-15 at home, they were outgained by 24 yards. I'm sorry, I think they were outgained by 24 yards, and or Georgia was outgained by 24 yards, and I think 3.8. Texas really put up some big numbers in that second game. I may have them reversed a little bit, but
there were a hell of a lot of turnovers in those two games too, which is that's the only way Clemson, if they can they don't even have to get, because what did Texas have, like 9 turnovers in both games combined, I believe. So if Clemson could just get like 3, they got a shot. Even 2-0. It might be what they need, but that's the thing. Texas has been turning the ball over a lot in those 2 games against Georgia.
The way you're talking about this game, it sounds like Texas will be the only offense in the game. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, they have no running game.
What I was given here by this one person that plays a lot of college totals, he gave me the under, and what you're describing is Clemson doesn't have enough offense to score with Texas, which Tony said lay the points. Even Andy said lay the points. So it sounds like this could be like that 38-3 kind of score.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I'm taking Clemson to win the game.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I think there's going to be one team, especially with such inconsistent play. Now, look, what might happen in this playoff is all the favorites win. And, we get the same thing in college basketball. Once you get down to like those last few teams, all the favorites usually win. So maybe that's what's going to happen here. But I just kind of believe that there's going to be one long shot that's going to make a little bit of a run. And so the team I'm going to go with is Clemson. And I think there's the experience factor. I've got Dabo going up against Sark. I'm not a Sark guy. So I think Dabo wins that every day. Again, I know there's no running game. I completely get that. But the quarterback Klubnik is playing lights out right now for Clemson. He also can run the football.
I was going to say another thing I wanted to mention. Sark's been here before. They were in the Final Four last year, so they do have that experience. They've got the two quarterbacks. I think that matters. There's a lot. Clemson has rebounded from what was last year. I think the first time they hadn't won 10 or more games in like a decade or so. So they rebounded nicely. Yeah. But I also respect the SEC, which I have rated almost a full touchdown better than the ACC as a conference as a whole, largely due to the strength and depth of the SEC, especially at the top, and that it includes Oklahoma, who I bashed a little bit earlier, but they came over from a solid program in the Big 12, and of course Texas came over as a defending Big 12 champion, so I think that just strengthened what was already the best and deepest conference in football. How much that's going to mean in this one game, I'm not sure, but I generally, in games like this, I prefer to go with the better defense, and I think here it's hard to argue that Texas's defense all year against better opposition is clearly the better defense. They were number one in the nation. They allowed just 4 yards per play, not 4 yards per rush, 4 yards per play. And I think it was about 2.9 yards per rush, and I think a ridiculous 8.6 yards, not per pass attempt, per pass completion. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. That's why, I think it'll be an under game. I'm not a total guy, but again, I can't see Clemson scoring a whole lot of points unless they get set up on turnovers. They're not, if they run the ball, they're just doing it just to be honest. They're not going to gain much.
But then again, if they get those turnovers, they're going up against an outstanding defense. So maybe if they're in good field position, they settle for field goals rather than touchdowns.
I don't think they're that inept, and I don't think Texas' defense is that good. I might be wrong.
The numbers say otherwise.
The other thing to consider is Texas hasn't played anybody this year. The two teams they played were Georgia, and they lost both games.
Who's Clemson played besides Georgia?
But I'm not a 12-point underdog, a favorite.
I think, and this is why I'll say that I lean over, is because I think Dabo's got to roll dice.
You might be right. I'm a total guy. So don't listen to me. But again, I'm just going on the fact that, and even if Texas wins, my bet's going to be bracket wise is whoever wins this game is going to the semifinals. I'm just not sold on Texas. And Quinn Ewers, there's something wrong with him. You can see it. There's no question. Yards he's putting up is mostly like if he throws it deep, guy's wide open. He's throwing it short. Receivers are making big plays. There's no gun in the arm anymore.
If he's struggling, and let's say has a turnover, by the middle of the second quarter, Manning comes in.
That's going to be the interesting thing.
I think you have to pull that trigger if you're Sark. I've watched Ewers a lot over the last month plus. He was great against Florida. You could really see him find the rhythm, and he was throwing to spots, and it looked like, okay, this is why this guy is hyped.
Yeah.
And against most other teams, he just, there's something that's off.
Yeah.
But we're in the playoffs now. There's no time to.
You can't hold anything back.
Yeah.
Nope.
Massage egos. If he's not feeling it, you got a very capable backup in Manning.
Also, I think that, sometimes, and this could happen to any of these teams this week, being at home could end up being an issue. If you don't have a comfortable lead in this game going into the fourth quarter, I think the home field is going to be working against these kids. They're young kids. Everybody's watching. You're the favorite. You're supposed to win. The pressure is going to be on. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen in this game, but one of these games is definitely going to happen. So keep that in mind. The pressure is going to come down on one of these teams. And I'm just, like I said, I just think there's going to be I think either the 10, 11, or 12 seed. I don't count Tennessee as a long shot team, But SMU, Indiana, Clemson, I believe one of those teams is going to win. And so I'm going to roll the dice with Clemson. There you go. So let's now move on quickly because we're going to update these as we go along. But I'm just going to get everybody's just quick take here as far as the bracket because, you're in bracket contests and things of that nature. So we have one more to go, Tony. And then we're going to run through the rest. Tennessee, Ohio State. This will be Saturday night, and an opportunity for Ohio State to either get the bad memory, at least a little bit of it, in the rear view, or they're going to come out just not feeling it, still punch drunk after what happened to them. The pressure being at home, they're going to go 3 and out. The fan base is going to boo them, and they're just going to wilt, and Tennessee's going to blow them out, or Ohio State's going to use it as motivation. They're going to go out and they're going to prove to everybody just how good they are because they're clearly more talented than Tennessee. But the problem is still the matchup could be something that Tennessee needs to take advantage of. Their running game against Ohio State, and also whether Ohio State can protect and run the ball themselves because of their injuries on the offensive line. So who do you like? Ohio State, I believe, is what, a 7.5?
7.5.
What do you like?
Give me those points and give me an outright upset. Balls.
Whoa, how about that?
And I think a couple of things. For starters, I mean, Tennessee's pretty battle tested. All these kids are 5-star recruits. So to say that Ohio State is clearly more talented than Tennessee is somewhat of a stretch. I'll give you that they probably have a little more depth. But, I mean, there's a lot of All-Americans on both sides. I also think that Ayamaliava is a more talented quarterback than Will Howard. I also think that there is a very interesting subplot coming on that apparently like 40% of the resale tickets are being purchased in Tennessee. So we could see a much different crowd than normally shows up at the Horseshoe. I guess just because Vols fans are really gung ho about supporting their team. And obviously, it's a fan base where that's their team. So I just think there are a lot of factors in play. You kind of hinted at it, Greg, with the way they lost to Michigan could beat you again. Because the doubt that sets in like a Groundhog Day type thing, even though they had finally gotten that off their backs. I think it's and I think because I vote in your poll every week that I have not been the biggest Ohio State believer all season. I saw the transfer portal rankings. I think a lot of people got behind that and said, "Oh, this team's clearly going to be dominant," and they've beaten some teams as in workmanlike fashion, but I haven't seen a clear like Georgia, like what I expected from Georgia.
Yeah, we don't have any of those teams at this year, that's for sure.
Exactly. So to me, I think, and you're giving me 7.5, so I get the hook too. Tennessee.
The Vols are going to have to get some extra clothes because it's going to be a little colder up there.
It will be chilly, but I mean Tennessee gets cold.
I like Tennessee as well in this game, but
Andy,
it's going to be chillier than it's going to be in Tennessee. That's for sure.
Oh, it gets cold up in those hills in Knoxville from time to time. Not like in Columbus, however. Tennessee, they've been a really solid team all year. They had that 4-point loss at Arkansas, and then they had that next loss. What was it? Alabama? Who was the other loss to?
Georgia.
Georgia, yeah, and they were both on the road.
Yes,
but Tennessee's been a solid team from the start of the season. The problem is in the national media and everything, they've been overshadowed by Texas and Georgia, who are near the top of the polls every year. And to a lesser extent, because they were having good seasons for a good part, they were overshadowed by Ole Miss and Alabama. So people didn't really get a chance to recognize how good Tennessee is. Ohio State, now, as far as the hangover effect, I've talked about it earlier. It's been 3 weeks since that loss to Michigan. They've heard everything negative they could possibly hear about that team, certainly for the first 10 days or so. It's important for them to get out front because if they give up the first points of the game, the fans will probably start booing immediately, and they'll say that Ryan Day should be fired at halftime, so we still have 30 minutes to overcome it. But I do think Tennessee competes in this game. I'm not quite sure if I feel comfortable calling the outright upset, but I do feel very comfortable in taking the points.
All right. Well, I'm going to take Ohio State. And again, if I'm going to take Ohio State, I'm just going to take them to be the Ohio State that we expected before Michigan. And that's just the way I'm going to go. Also,
by the way, mark me down for Ohio State to win the game but not cover. So as far as advancing in the tournament goes.
And I don't like the fact that Tennessee, they've only played 4 true road games, and 2 of them were the losses. And in both of those games, the young quarterback, had his worst games. So he's now going to be expected to go to Columbus, the big horseshoe, prime time. Everybody's watching, not just him, but other kids. But still, he's a young quarterback. That is a good defense. Matter of fact, Caleb Downs, I believe,
you talked about Ohio State's outstanding pass defense earlier.
Yeah, they have an incredible group of kids. Now, the one kid they can pick is that Igbinosun kid. That kid is a flag machine. He can't cover anybody because when he does, he's holding them. So that's something to keep an eye on. Are the refs going to allow Ohio State's defensive backs, including Igbinosun, hold? Because if they do, they let them get away with it. Tennessee's in trouble. If they start throwing the flag early, that's a big break for Tennessee. But keep an eye on that kid, Caleb Downs, the safety for Ohio State. The kid's just an awesome player, transfer from Alabama. He's going to be an awesome NFL player. Anyway, I think it's an issue that Tennessee has not played well on the road compared to at home. And now they've got to expect to do this at Ohio State in such a big game. So I'm going to go ahead and take Ohio State, and I'll take them to cover as well. But Andy, I think you're the only one that's going to go with Tennessee to win and Ohio State to win and Tennessee to cover. Okay, so let's just quickly go through the rest. Andy, who are you going to go with? Texas, Arizona State?
Boy, I like both teams. I have a future ticket on Arizona State at, I think it's now 50-1. I think I misspoke last week. And I also have Texas as part of the field against Ohio State and Georgia. I'd like to make a case. I want to see what the line is in the game. I'll probably look to play Arizona State plus the points. But I think
just a win.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but I have to take Texas to win the game.
Okay. Ohio State, Oregon.
Oregon.
Andy?
Yeah, Oregon.
Penn State, Boise.
Penn State.
Notre Dame, Georgia.
Notre Dame.
Tony, Texas, Arizona State.
I'll say Texas wins. Now,
Tennessee, Oregon.
Is that game a Fiesta Bowl game?
No, it's a Peach Bowl.
Okay, that's Atlanta. All right. Oh, good.
Tennessee, Oregon.
Oregon.
Penn State, Boise.
We'll say Boise breaks through.
And Notre Dame, Georgia.
Georgia.
And we're going to talk next week regarding the Georgia matchup, or in a couple of weeks, regarding that quarterback situation, because that's going to be the big mystery. Is if the young quarterback comes in and plays, how good does he play? Does he play so good that Georgia's offense is better than they've been all year, or does he play so bad that they have no shot? So that's going to be a mystery. Okay, I'm going to go Clemson. As I said, I'm going to take Clemson in the semis with Oregon and Penn State and Notre Dame. I'm going to agree with you, Andy. So let's go ahead and wrap that up. Semifinals, Andy, you have Texas, Oregon.
That's who they'll be playing. I will go with Texas.
Oh, and Andy, you have Penn State, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
And who's your champion, Andy?
I'm going to go Notre Dame.
All right. Look at Andy going with the Irish. I like it. Tony, Texas, Oregon.
Ducks.
What'd you say?
Ducks.
Okay. Boise, Georgia.
Georgia.
Winner?
Ducks. I'm Team Dylan Gabriel.
And I'm going to be the same. I'm going Oregon and Penn State, with Oregon winning the championship. So there you go. We got 2 Oregons, 1 Notre Dame. Obviously, we'll talk more about this every.
In other words, you've got Oregon beating Penn State twice.
Yes, I do. Yes, a rematch in the championship game. And yeah, you know what, Tony? I really think that what we're going to see if Oregon wins the national championship, I think Dylan Gabriel is going to move up maybe 2 or 3 rounds in the draft. And I think that what you're going to see is that some general manager is going to realize that, you know what, it does matter when you have experience in college football as opposed to be drafting one of these kids.
Yeah, just look at last year's Oregon quarterback.
Yes. And it's just you have to, you got, because if not, then Dylan Gabriel's going to be available in the 5th round. Someone's going to take him, and he's going to be pushed into some sort of situation early in his career. He's going to look really good, and people are going to go, "How didn't I take this guy?"
You do the draft stuff with our lads and them. The knock is what, that he's short.
Pretty much, that's it. That's the only knock. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a blazing arm.
And I said that about Drew Brees too.
Purdy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that shortness got him only into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Or will.
So that's what I'm saying.
And Gabriel's been doing this. I mean, he's done it in Orlando. He's done it in Norman. He's done it here. Just, yes, it helps to have Johnson. I mean, clearly he looked lost without him against Wisconsin. But for the most part, he does a nice job incorporating the tight ends, and getting in and out of good play calling. I mean, and that experience is half the battle. So I mean, look, with all the parity that we've seen, that's my big trump card is I want to trust the quarterback that I'm going to back to win the national championship.
We're going to talk the NFL right now, and just want to remind everybody here that's watching us, especially if you're just checking in for the NFL, that we are now exclusively full-length videos, Proline TV. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. This is the perfect time to do it, and we want to make sure that you come back and that you don't miss a thing. So again, Proline TV, and once the year ends, Jim, once we hit to 2025, we're going to start talking some college basketball as well, aren't we?
I've been knock on wood, 10-2 the last 12 games at colleges.
Nice.
Well, you've got 3 more weeks until we start.
To keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Rolling.
So it's going to be a lot of fun talking college hoops. We're going to be doing that once we hit January. But right now, we've got the NFL, and we are, matter of fact, this was in the Coffee Club email. For the first time in NFL history, half the playoff field is set with 3 weeks to play. That is just, I guess, further proof of what we've been talking about, that you could say on one hand, the parity has opened the door for some situations and some things to happen, like at the bottom of the at the playoffs, but at the top, it's just these teams are with 12 wins, 11 wins, 13 wins, and on the other end, you got all these teams with 3 and 4 wins. It's just been a very strange and unfortunately very disappointing season. We expected to be a lot more competition, and a lot of these teams that we expected they were going to be a lot better just have not been. So we look at it right here, and there are 7 of the 14 spots already clinched. And we also have division titles. The Chiefs, the Bills, and the Texans. The Steelers can clinch with a playoff berth. Excuse me, they can clinch a playoff berth. And they also, I believe, can clinch the division title. If they beat Baltimore, they'll own the tiebreaker. What do you guys think about it? I'm going to start with you, Jim. Pittsburgh and Baltimore this week.
Well, the big question is the 2 key players for Pickens and Watt. The word that I'm getting today is there's a good possibility they both play, but it is Wednesday, and that's it's a little too early to say for sure. And I'm a big injury guy. The history of this meeting between these two coaches, these 2 teams, it's all close games, and Pittsburgh's had a hell of a run at them. And coming off the loss to Philadelphia last week, and they played without Pickens, they didn't have the over the top, but it was still a competitive game. But Philadelphia's playing at a very high level right now. I haven't seen Baltimore consistently play at the high level, really almost forever in big games. Jackson is just not produced. He's and it might be psychological. They run up against Pittsburgh and they just don't play. And they beat them earlier. Pittsburgh won that game. It was close. But all these games are close between these 2. So it's really hard to look at a line and say 6 6-point favorite. If those two players come back for Pittsburgh, I'm going to have to go with the Steelers.
Isn't it funny how one team has beaten the other team 8 of the last 9 times they've played? One team beat him this year as an underdog of what, 2.5, I think it was?
Close,
3, I think. Yeah.
And a few weeks later, the other team is not only still the favorite, but now the line has increased and doubled. So
just the venue has changed. That's number one, and then you're also looking at the odds makers, looking at those players may miss the game.
So how do you think the line will drop if they both play?
Oh, you'd probably drop it 2 points.
Yeah, I'd say 4.5 at worst.
Well, you know what? If I'm out there right now, and I would advise you to bet it, because I think right now, I think TJ Watt definitely plays. I think Pickens is probably like 75%, but it's a hamstring, so you never know.
I think they both play, and I think they were both held out last week because the game against Philadelphia is an interconference game. The division game is more important. So if you're going to go 1-1, you want to win the division game that arguably clinches you the division. And they were the underdog in Philadelphia. So even though they played well as an underdog, you're going against a team that won 8-9 in a row. Probably have to think that that's a game you could lose, whereas you're going to get an extra week of rest for those two players against a team you've already beaten and that you know very well.
And they didn't play all that bad. I mean,
No.
Even with those, the big guy, the wide receiver out, it was competitive.
Yeah, it was, they had that situation. What was it 17-3 or something like that? What was it? When they had the ball late in the first half, their offense had done absolutely nothing. And then you almost felt that, all right, if you don't do anything now, I mean, this game is over. And that's exactly when they started to play good. And then they got it all the way to the point where they're driving, and then they fumbled the football, or they probably scored there, and now we've got a great football game.
The thing is, Philadelphia and Baltimore, or Buffalo, are playing the best football right now in the league, AFC and NFC. They're really playing well. So you go up against these guys, you're really in for a tussle. But if they can get those players back, I'm definitely be on the Steelers. And you're right. Probably the best thing to do is be bet it now, because if they come back, that line's not going to be 6.
And also, I think that Pittsburgh definitely proved that you've got the recipe to beat the Eagles. Not saying that every team has it, the talent, but you have to eliminate Barkley. If you can eliminate Barkley, and you've got the talent to eliminate him, like the Steelers did, you got a shot.
And also at 6.5, if you want to consider a teaser, play Pittsburgh now, because that way you don't have to go across 0 if that line comes down.
Good
Yes,
point.
absolutely.
Of course, the people that like the other side, they could take Baltimore down to pick them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Like
That's what I meant.
I'm not on that side. I'm just saying if they do.
Well, Pittsburgh, again, keep in mind they've won 8 out of the last 9 and covered. 8 of the last 9 and 4 straight up and against the spread against the Ravens, and yet they're the 6.5 point dog. Remember, we talked about this, Jim, with the Seahawks in Arizona just about a month ago. One team dominates the other team in the series recently. The other team's the favorite, and who won? So here we go again. We're going to see what happens.
And keep in mind the difference, for example, between the Seattle example, which is very true. Here you've got coaches who have played about 35 games against one another. So obviously we're seeing you have to make the assumption or draw the conclusion that Tomlin just has no reason to outcoach Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Who's a great coach as well, and a Super Bowl winner.
And because you can check out the two. We're gonna have the edited interviews that I did with both our insider from the Ravens and the Steelers, and our Ravens insider said, the Steelers are in their heads. There's just no question about it. It's a psychological thing right now, and the Steelers have their number. So we'll see. Okay. How about, speaking of the Eagles, what do you guys think, Tony? What do you think about that Eagles-Washington game?
I mean, look, I think they put out a small grease fire with the whole A.J. Brown-Hurts controversy by beating Pittsburgh. I think that could have snowballed into something, and especially since we're in the month where they completely collapsed last year. So
Yeah, what's up with the Eagles with all these little things that seem to happen in the locker room that it's like, where are these things coming from? And like you said, what if they lost a football game? Would that have been another springboard to what happened last year?
Absolutely.
It's usually a wide receiver diva type, that starts all this stuff.
Yeah. Yep. And Brandon Graham, who's out for the season, kind of put all their business out there. And he apologized for it, but I think he did it for them to squash it or try to. I think that was contrived. But yeah, certainly Hurts has had beef with now A.J. Brown and Sirianni. And, he's the key to it all in Philly. So, but yeah, definitely a big to survive Pittsburgh. I think they're a better team than Washington, obviously. What's the number there now?
I think it was 3.5. Let me look.
I think they're both available now.
Yeah, 3.5.
3.5. Yeah.
I mean, it's a game that I probably won't touch. I think that there's probably other opportunities. Same thing with the Steelers and Ravens. I didn't give my opinion because I would want to back Baltimore, but I would want to do it without Watt involved. If Watt's involved, it's entirely too many points. But in this instance, I think the rookie of the year talk, I think, is now expanded to it being Daniels or Nix. But certainly, I don't think Daniels has slowed down any. He's still making good plays.
Nix might have played himself out of that with 3 interceptions.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, look, I think Daniels can get this done. They're at home. This is a very interesting game. I want no part of. I think maybe Philly wins by a field goal late, and Washington covers.
Andy,
I like Philadelphia in this game quite a bit. Who's Washington beat this year? Their best win was against a team that's 7-7. The Washington wins have come against teams that are combined 35-82 straight up against the rest of the NFL, meaning that other than games against Washington, which they lost, the opposition is 35-82 in the games that Washington has won. This is a Philadelphia team that I think has been on a mission all year, and they've shown it for the most part. Remember, you talked about the collapse last year, 10-1 to a 1-5 finish, internal issues, and an early first round exit in the playoffs against Tampa Bay. Philadelphia, we know about Barkley, and I think he's going to be okay to play. But even without him, the entire rushing attack, of which Barkley's been a part all season, they've actually been better in their last 7 games than in their first 7 games. I believe they were averaging about 166 yards rushing per game, or 162 yards rushing per game in the first 7 games. Now it's over 200 yards in their last 7 games, and that's going to be an issue because it's going to wear down the Washington defense. At the same time, aside from the quality or lack of quality of Washington's wins, they've not been the same team over the last 7 games that they were over the first 7 games. Daniels seems to have slowed down a little bit. He's still having a rookie of the year type season. The offense has not been as efficient. At the same time, both Philadelphia's defense has shown great improvement. Washington's defense has also shown great improvement. So I might look under the game, but I do like Philadelphia. Keep in mind, with the loss by Detroit last week, they're now tied 12-2 with the Vikings and the Lions and the Eagles. Now, Detroit still has the advantage because one of their 2 losses was against Buffalo in the AFC. Minnesota and Philadelphia's losses both were in the NFC. Minnesota's, of course, was Detroit, and Philadelphia lost to Tampa Bay and Atlanta. Now, we know that Minnesota and Detroit are going to play each other at the end of the season, so one of those teams will win. And the Eagles likely will win out if they win this game because they've got the Giants and the Cowboys up to finish the season. So they'll probably they'll be rooting for Minnesota in that game because they would own the tiebreaker against Minnesota. They would not own it against Detroit. So that's just a secondary thing here. But Philadelphia, I think, now has another reason to go out and not take any chances because they've been waiting all season for a chance to catch Detroit. They finally caught them.
Yeah, if they win this game, they're probably going to get the number 1 seed.
This running game by Philadelphia, if you can't stop the run, they wear you out. In the second half, they are just devastating. They're so physical, and quite frankly, Hurts threw the ball pretty well last week. I mean, he came out much more aggressively throwing, and they jumped on Pittsburgh. And Washington, Andy said it, Philadelphia's a better team. Normally, I like to play home underdogs, especially in division, especially when the talent is reasonable. But boy, this is hard. Philadelphia is not going to let up here.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to go against the Eagles.
I'm not betting it. I didn't bet it, but I'm not gonna. My tendency to play home dogs, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play them.
Yeah, when you got a hot team like the Eagles or the Lions when they were hot, or any of these top teams, it's just so hard to go against them until they lose. I mean, why go against them? Especially at a line like that. It's different if it's 6 or 7, but it's 3.5.
Andy's point about who did Washington beat. I mean, the record of the teams they beat is bad.
Yeah, and that's not too surprising considering, again, Washington talent-wise, they can't match up with the Eagles. The fact is that, they're just not there yet. They're another offseason or two away from building the talent around Daniels. So therefore, how you might say how is Washington playing so good? Well, there you go. As he said, look at the schedule. They're taking care of business against inferior teams.
Keep in mind also that we're not talking about 2 or 3 wins. They're 9-5. Those 9 wins, almost 2/3 of their schedule are against those teams with those bad records.
And again, that's the beauty of the NFL is how they divide. This is where they come up with the parity. You to make sure that the best of the worst teams get the hardest and the softest schedules.
Would I be surprised if Washington wins? No, I won't be surprised. It's the NFL, but it's not the way I'm betting it.
I don't think I've ever seen the league this much disparity between the top and the bottom. I can't remember it ever being like this.
Washington.
Well, you mentioned, Greg, you said 7 teams have already clinched the playoff spot because I only show 6.
Just reading from Mark's thing here. 7 of 14 spots were filled after the Monday night game.
Okay, so I'm still showing the 4 division winners in the AFC. Baltimore probably clinches this weekend, and then I'm just showing Philadelphia and Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. That's
so maybe Minnesota added, but this thing that I'm looking at does not show Minnesota having clinched, but I think they had to have clinched, so maybe that's right. But we've seen it in the AFC. The same 6 teams have been battling for these spots for the last 2 or 3 weeks without anybody else available. They were all eliminated after, I think, about 13 weeks. Unprecedented.
Is there going to be does anybody know, before we move on, is there any games that are going to be affected by weather for sure? Do we know anything for sure?
It's going to be cold all the way in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Across the board.
In December, Jim? It's going to be cold.
But it's not just chilly. It's freezing. I talked to somebody in Cleveland this morning, and they said it was like 13 degrees. I mean, 13. Some of these teams are going to be, if you're not used to playing in that weather, it's going to affect you.
Yeah, Rams Jets could get interesting because of that. They play in SoFi, so
Saints and Packers could also be because it's a Monday night game. So you're talking 7:15 local time when that game kicks off. That can't help New Orleans too much.
Yeah, let's see. There are the 7 teams.
No, in Green Bay, New Orleans indoor team, backup quarterback, backup. That's a tough spot, but it's a big number. It's a big number.
Yeah, the 7 teams are Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Houston, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Detroit, Minnesota. Those are the 7 teams.
The Jets. I mean, that could be tough weather there too.
Yeah.
All right.
Team. I think you just said that, Tony. Right.
Right.
Buffalo and New England as well. Not with an indoor team, but a huge point spread. And you have to wonder, after scoring 40 points and winning their last 2 games, they lost at the Rams,
90 points in 2 games.
Yeah, you have to wonder if Buffalo might not have a little bit of a setback. Not a setback this week. They'll win the game, but 14 in those conditions, they may be just let's play a half of football and send everybody to the heaters.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, just checking out right now. Buffalo, as you said, Jim, their scheduled temperature is 17 on Sunday.
Ouch.
Detroit at Chicago. Another one.
So
that Chicago's a dumpster fire. That team they need to burn that team down and start over. That's a mess.
One of the coldest games of all time took place in Cincinnati, where they're hosting Cleveland this Sunday. which was originally the Thursday night game that they flexed out to put
with the backup, the third string quarterback starting because they benched Winston.
Yeah, Robinson starting, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that
By the
situation.
way, after giving up on the Bengals a few weeks ago, after I had them against Pittsburgh, they very much have a chance now at a wild card, assuming to be here. They host Denver, the team that they may very well be, especially if Denver loses to the Chargers tomorrow night. They host Denver, so they could get the tiebreaker. They do have to win out, and they may play at Pittsburgh, where Pittsburgh's resting players.
That's amazing. They got the best offense in the league. You can't stop
and the worst
them,
defense.
But the worst
one of
defense.
the worst.
Incredible.
Okay. A couple more things on the Washington game. They've covered 6 straight as home dogs of 5 or less versus teams with a 600 or greater percentage. And Dan Quinn is 15-4-1 against the spread as a dog off of a straight up win. 2-0-1 in that mark this year. Again, 15-4-1 overall. So some of the trends there do say Washington. But this year, if you take a look, the Eagles are 7-1 straight up ATS on the road. Actually, away from home, because we're going to count that Green Bay game, of course, as a kind of like a road game. Okay, so then I guess before we go, a couple more things. And then just what do you guys think about the other big game? Because there aren't many of them. There's the Thursday night game, of course, tomorrow night, Denver and the Chargers. Chargers need the game desperately after losing 3 out of 4. They've beaten the Denver Broncos already. It's the home finale as well for the Chargers. So this becomes a really big one for LA as they've slipped behind Denver. And then the other game, Minnesota at Seattle. And I guess it's looking like Gino's going to play at this point.
And it's also Seattle's last home game.
Yeah, that was pretty bad against the Packers. That was a rough one. I'm going to be on the Chargers minus the 2.5. The question,
their season's on the line.
I mean, you got 2 good coaches. You got Herbert. If it's all about injuries now.
Yeah,
it's with these teams. Mm-hmm. And the question then is, Nick's throwing 3 interceptions last week. I mean, they should have lost that game. They did not play well. And is that an aberration, or is that just the rookie becoming a rookie again?
Well, the same thing about the Chargers being blown out at home to Tampa Bay. That was an aberration.
How do you explain that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not so much the 17 points that they only scored, because that's typical for them. It's the 40 that they gave up.
Right. I mean, we all know Baker's been playing good, and Buccaneers are playing great, but 40, man, that's a lot. Wow.
Well, again, you're going to go back. Denver's first win of the year was what, I think 27-6 at Tampa, and the Chargers' worst loss of the year was 40-17 at home to Tampa.
Right.
Not sure I'm going to make much out of it, because I do like the Chargers here. It is their last home game, which normally means something, but I don't know with the fan base with the Chargers if it's going to mean all that much. You'll probably have a good Denver contingent showing up there, but they trail the Broncos by a game in the standings. They beat them 1, so they gain the tiebreaker if they win this game and pull even, and they fall 2 games behind with 2 to play as far as being able to make it into overtake Denver as far as one of the teams. I'm going to concede Baltimore is, whether they win or lose this week, they may very well clinch a playoff spot based upon the other games. In fact, it might very well be the Chargers if they lose. Baltimore would eliminate them and get in there. I do like the Chargers tomorrow night, but I won't be shocked if Denver wins. I'm just going to play the number.
So the other day, Jim, you and I talked about the injury situation with Patrick Mahomes, and I said something along the lines of, "I'll see it when I believe it," that he's not going to play. We've been down this road before with Patrick Mahomes, and sure enough, dramatically, the line has switched from Houston about 1.5, 2.5 to now Kansas City 3.5. Because Patrick Mahomes was a full participant in practice today. So it's sure looking like Patrick Mahomes is going to wind up starting once again on Saturday.
Well, it's been a 7-point move. I mean, actually, Houston was a 3-point favorite when they thought Wentz was going to go, and now it's 3.5 the other side. I mean, I'm shocked that he's got a high ankle sprain and he's able to get out there.
It's not a high ankle sprain. That's why it's an ankle injury, but it's not a high ankle sprain. So, yeah, it was reported differently. This is Patrick Mahomes, man, and he's got some tough ankles, I guess.
He's a tough young man, that's for sure.
So if you didn't take him a couple days ago, you missed the boat because the Chiefs are now the favorite over Houston.
What's interesting in this game is that you have to assume Buffalo's going to win out with their 2 games against New England and their game against the Jets. That would put them at 14-3. The Chiefs are 13-1 right now, and we don't know. But they do have a 2-game edge over Buffalo. It's actually a 1-game edge because if they end up tied, Buffalo's got the tiebreaker. So I don't know. Kansas City can afford 1 loss. And I would maybe hold Mahomes out of this game, even though the next 2 games are against division opponents. I think they play Denver, and I guess they play the Raiders at the end of the season here in Allegiant. So this is not a must-win game for Kansas City, but if they lose and Buffalo wins, which is likely, then the last 2 games become must-wins as far as the number 1 seed. So they have a game they can afford to lose, and if it means giving Mahomes a week of rest so that he's healthy going into the playoffs, I might consider that, or certainly pull him early if they get a big lead.
All right, so we are going to conclude our show.
Well, they got Pacheco back, and they say Hollywood Brown is going to be on the field this week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a little bit of help. I mean, they're going to have to go with some quick dump-off passes. Mahomes cannot possibly be mobile. So they're going to have to run the ball more, short passes, not try to give him too much time to go down the field. So, I mean, it's they might have a little bit different game plan than what you normally would see from them.
All right, guys, you ready for your high five segment?
I haven't stayed under 60 seconds yet.
Oh, yeah, you have.
You did it. Last time I was on a couple weeks ago.
All right, let's see. Let me get ready here. So we got the high fives to wrap it up. Who goes first? Let's go. I'll tell you what, we're going to go with Jim first.
Okay, this is my best play for the pros. Is that what I'm doing here?
Yes. Oh, whatever you want. Whatever play you want.
Okay.
You can give college basketball if you want.
Well, I don't even know the games of the lines. How could I do that?
Well, it's
it's 4 days ahead of time.
It's Wednesday. You could do a game for tomorrow night, tonight. All right, here you go, Jim. You're starting.
I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions. I know they're damaged on defense, but against the Bears, I don't think it matters. The Bears are a dumpster fire. Nothing helps them. New coach, nothing. Caleb is holding on to the ball too much. The maturity that they wondered about in the beginning when they drafted him and the question marks about him is all coming true. The team is a mess, though. Their leadership's a mess. The ownership's a mess. The coaching's a mess. And the players, I mean, they're just not showing up. They're one of the worst teams in football. The Lions are going to destroy them.
All right. That was about 22 seconds short of a minute.
Well, somebody else can get those seconds.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. All right. So, Jim, you're taking the Detroit Lions. What's the spread again?
Pardon me?
What's the spread again?
I think it's 6.5.
It looks 6.5.
Okay.
By game time, it'll be 7.
He's going against those Bears. I love it. All right.
Yeah, definitely against. Well, you got the Lions. They're still in the hunt. You know, they're not. That's a pretty good team with a crazy man coach, but he does a lot of good things too. And
remember, their recent play suggested that they were ripe finally to lose a game when they've been winning those close games against Chicago and Green Bay. So maybe they got that out of their system. They can get refocused, especially now with the number 1 seed not certain.
Correct.
Tony, you ready?
Yep.
All right. You're on.
All right. Thursday night football, Chargers, Broncos, big game, obviously, for both. I like to root for chaos, so it would be nice to see to see Denver win and the Chargers then have to fend off the 6-win AFC teams. Whoever gets hot, that would make for a fun week, final week or two of the regular season. But I'm going to go total in this game. It's pretty low, 41.5. I think Cortland Sutton surpasses his receiving yardage prop total at 67.5. He's adjusted that in 6 of his last 7 games. And only week that he did not do that was last week when he scored a touchdown, but had just 3 catches. So I think Bo Nix looks to him often. Ladd McConkey's back for the Chargers. Kimani Vidal is starting to break out. So I think we see a higher scoring game than expected. And I just gave you a bunch of prop plays. So over on Thursday night.
All right, over it is for 54 seconds. Great job. Andy, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm going to go.
By the way, someone's got the, I need to lower someone has feedback. I don't know if someone's playing our show. We need to lower that. Hello? Good. No? Test? All right, good. Excellent. Now, are you ready, Andy? No, I'm ready. Still hearing it. Let me see do I have to edit? Let me see if I can. Okay, perfect. I just muted everybody except you, Andy. All right, Andy, you ready?
Okay.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, I was going to say it's not. Well, I'm just going to say it's not me that's doing it because I've got the volume on and I can't hear it. So that's
all right.
Okay,
you're on.
3, 2, 1. Let's go. I'm going to go with the game between Arizona and Carolina. I'm going to lay the 4 with Arizona. The Cardinals are 7-7, but all 7 losses are to teams with winning records, and those teams are currently holding playoff positions, even though not all of them have clinched. Their combined record is 70-28. Those are the games that the Cardinals have lost to. Their 7 wins are against teams that are combined 39-59. I talked about that in one of the games earlier. In terms of quality losses, the Cardinals have one of the top opponents' win percentages of the teams they've lost to. Carolina's more in line with the quality of teams that they've defeated. The average record of their 7 victims is 5.5 and 8.5, and Carolina's just 3-11. After dropping 3 straight, Arizona comfortably got their win over New England last week, and I'm going to look for them to get a similarly comfortable win, albeit on the road. I've got it something like 31-17 Arizona to they continue their push, hopefully, towards a playoff spot.
Perfect. Right on the number, 59 seconds. Great job, Andy. And that's
I rehearsed 7 times before we went on the show. to read my notes.
I believe that.
All right. So
you know my reputation as a wacko.
So next week we are going to wrap up the first weekend of college football 12-team playoffs, the first round. It's going to be a hell of a weekend. Boy, this is going to be historic, and we'll talk all about it next week's show. Don't forget, next week we're on Thursday. So, are you guys? Who's good for next Thursday?
Well, I might have a little problem because
that's right. You guys are doing your show on Thursday.
Yeah, if that doesn't change, I'm going to have to come in the later part if I can make.
You want a show?
No, I think I'm doing the show with Jim next week on January 2nd, which is not the same. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine we could possibly do the show on New Year's Day. We don't have as many games as we usually do on New Year's Day to be watching to do it, but we'll see. Or because I have a
New Year's Day is actually those are the playoff games.
3 of I think 3 of them they're spread out.
Yeah. So,
but if we have to, maybe on Thursday, if we could do it earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon, it would be okay.
All right. So next week, though, Jim, you're the only one with a potential issue. Of course, we'll have to find. I think Mark's out again next week, so we'll figure it out. We'll do something. We'll be on. We'll keep the show alive, and before you know it, we'll be again at the new year and talking all sorts of sports. But for right now, we still have a ton of NFL and college football to go over here on the show. Again, hopefully, we'll get Mark back. Christmas is next Wednesday, so it looks like this is our Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, Jim and I will be back again on Friday with Mark. So we're going to talk some more here on Proline TV with the three of us. And then
we also have Saturday. So
Jim and I, of course, are on every Saturday. So that's another reason to subscribe for those two shows, Friday and Saturday. We'll have the updated injury reports for the NFL. Those are going to be the last reports we get. So, and of course, there are Saturday games coming up. So that is something else we'll have to consider. So I don't know, maybe we'll do it early on Saturday. What's the early game on Saturday?
Good question.
Look. Houston, Kansas City.
Oh, okay. Is that 12 or 1 o'clock?
What's the time? Oh, 10 a.m.
1, I think. Yeah, 10 your time. Yeah.
So 1 o'clock. Okay, cool.
We might have to do it early in the morning.
Yeah, you wake up like what, at 4 in the morning, Jim?
I was up at 2 this morning.
2 in the morning. Okay.
Yeah. But you're not calling me at 2.
What time do you get to sleep? 9, 8,
11. I had 3 hours sleep.
3 hours sleep. Where did we get that from? Did you go to the Army?
And I was going to ask if it was too much partying. And if the answer is no, then I would have said maybe not enough partying.
Andy, the partying ended a few years ago.
Just a few.
I can relate.
All right, guys.
I'm definitely not capable of partying anymore.
We have one more to go before the end of the year.
Now, is there a coincidence that is at the time frame that place we talked about earlier closing a few years ago?
Yeah, Jim is responsible.
No, I think I went there twice since I've been in Las Vegas. I had no idea they closed in 2000.
And I'm going to say the 2 times were probably to do the radio show, because a lot of the stations back then did a lot of radio remotes from there. The sports shows.
I didn't go there for radio at the time.
Yeah, I didn't think you did. All right, guys. Have a Merry Christmas to everybody out there, and we'll see you again hopefully on Thursday.
Okay, guys.
Unless we do it another day. All right, guys.
Be good.
See you later.
Bye-bye.